hours Zwift session, so I'm still literally in my cycling gear, all dripping, soaking wet. So while you guys are chatting, I'm gonna put something on. I'm gonna put my video on pause and chuck a t-shirt on. Be back in 2 minutes.
Well, this is the first time that all six of us have been together since Sheffield in May.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good laugh. That was. I quite enjoyed that. Hopefully, there's more of those sort of things coming up, and even like more different events. You know, for a lot of us, it was a lot of travel that day. I'm sure for you, Rachel, it was quite a long time as well. It took me like 4 hours to get there each way, so it was a nightmare. But the next year, it's going to be hosted in London, I think, somewhere. So I'll be looking forward to.
That's good.
Somewhere around me, probably, yeah, somewhere.
Perfect, even better. Although I did enjoy getting the Airbnb, and I came down with another carnivore, someone that I found on actually Instagram, the Kitchen Detox. We went down together, and I called her my weekend wife. We just ate lots of meat and enjoyed the conference for the weekend, so that was fun.
You didn't eat loads of quinoa that they had in buckets there?
Oh, I couldn't believe that. And the bars. What were the bars? There was some bars there, wasn't there? And lots, just tubs full of carbs. Yeah, that was a bit odd. But you know, yeah,
it was stuff that I wouldn't even have eaten when I was veggie. It was amazing.
Yeah. No, we took in Waitrose, they do these what do they call them? They're like beef bites, and they have got the most amount of fat on them. They're delicious. And Frankie bought them with her and cooked them up. They were absolutely delicious. They were like melt in your mouth. I was so happy to skip that queue and go and sit down with our little packed lunchbox and eat that instead.
I bet Ben skipped the queue and nicked all the salmon.
Oh yeah, there was none left. I thought I'm not even.
that was Ben's fault.
Yeah, it's all you.
I was just whizzing through the comments there as you were talking. Just to say we got a few new members and some people saying hello. I think this is one of yours, Jonathan, isn't it? And I can never get this name.
Zbigniew Wozenich. Yeah.
Where's he from? Bolton?
He's a Bolton now. He's from Poland.
Yeah. I would bet he was somewhere there. We got Rick here. Quacking as always, and some carnival muscle.
That's me.
Yeah, I know. Vitalitus, hello, semi-retired Bob. I want to be semi-retired. I'd like a semi-anything actually. Rick is okay now, which is good. Ben, is that you, Ben, with your muscles and steak?
No, not me.
No? Okay. I think we should name check the people that have popped in. Baddest Cat, hello. Do we like cats? Yeah, we like cats, don't we? Mark Harmon. Is that one of Rich's people?
One of mine, I think. He's a member of my channel.
Yeah. I've seen the name and I've seen that chest. He's looking good, isn't he? Have you coached him, Jonathan?
Mark Harmon.
No, I wish. Great testimonial if I did.
That's Eric Clapton's keyboard player.
What actually it is, or they share the same name?
They share the same name, I believe.
Yeah. I once worked with a guy called Rod Stewart, and he absolutely hated that he was Rod Stewart. Very nice guy. Andy C77. Do you reckon he was born in 1977? Hello, team. And that looks like Cole Pilkington, I think that thing there. Right. Question. Here, this is what we're for. We're here to do this, aren't we? Andy 828. Can mitochondria be enhanced with nutrition and or exercise? If so, how? Hands up, who wants to go first?
Should we go clockwise?
Yeah.
Well, we've had this problem before because it's different on every screen.
It should be the same. So it should be Stephen, me, Ben, Richard, Phil, and Rachel. Maybe we'll let the guests start this time. So if we get Rachel on board first.
Let's go anti-clockwise.
Maybe Rachel can. Yeah.
Go on, Rachel.
Just bear with me for 2 seconds because I've had something. something come up. 2 seconds.
All right, no, that's okay. All right. Well,
Don't know
Phil,
how
go on
to
then,
turn
Phil.
the camera off for a second.
Phil, do you want to go while Rachel's turning the camera off?
No, I'm going to defer to the exercise guys for this because I want to see the exercise added in. So go ahead first.
Well, Jonathan, then, because
Oh, go on then.
Way too much.
Go on then. Mitochondria, the energy powerhouse of the cell, apparently. Good stuff. I mean, the main thing people talk about with mitochondria is the ATP production. How do you produce the most amount of ATP, which is the energy currency of the body? Effectively, you want the mitochondria, the complex systems within it, so the parts of the mitochondria, you want them to spin as efficiently as possible. In an optimal, perfect, ancestrally, historically excellent state, they'll spin at around 9,000 RPM. And if your energy production is optimized, your potential or opportunities to mitigate disease are the highest. Now, how you can enhance it for nutrition is eating a high-fat carnivore diet. There's some foods which are lower in deuterium, and for those who don't know, deuterium is a heavy isotope of hydrogen. The more mass that the hydrogen has, the less effectively those ATPase will spin. So it means the ability to produce energy is down-regulated. I think a big part of it, in my opinion, and I think Phil might agree, is the side of things which is to do with deuterium. So the way you get around that is just lowering the deuterium content of the body. For most people, it's too high. Sugary foods, fruit, honey, they're going to be high in deuterium. So you're going to try and reduce those things as much as possible. The other thing about, reducing deuterium through exercise, cold thermogenesis, stuff like that, that's going to be an added benefit as well. I know Rich has got a great explanation of how exercise can impact it. So I might defer to him to talk about that bit, if that's possible.
Yeah. Who wants to go next? That was a great answer, Jonathan. I think the good thing about the panel is we have different skills. I don't know there's background noise going on. Anyway.
I'll sneak in quickly before Richard. He'll have much more detailed stuff than me, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that Jonathan's nailed it there, and the deuterium angle is what I wanted to get into. A lot of people don't know about this and the effect of deuterium on the mitochondria and where it comes from, and Jonathan's kind of nailed that. But also, there are other things that stop the depletion of deuterium, which is artificial light, EMFs, all these things. Well, anything. It's so simple, isn't it? Really, anything that is against our sort of ancestral heritage and how we're supposed to exist in the wild, how we should have been grounded, how we should have had the dark at night, and the proper light through the day, and all of these things that we put ourselves through, this crappy food, artificial light, all of that sort of thing, even sort of depression, stress, that kind of thing, emotional issues. All of this affect mitochondrial function, and so stop the depletion of deuterium on that level. Deuterium is just, for me, part of the chain, really. It all starts with the spiritual aspect, down into the emotional aspect, down into the light, water, magnetism. But all of these things, if we mess them up, they will stop the mitochondria working properly. But if you eat a high-fat diet, a high-fat animal fat diet, that high fat will actually trigger the cells to hydrate themselves and produce their own deuterium-depleted water, which is how the mitochondria will function properly. So if you're filling yourself full of deuterium, not only are animal fats very low in deuterium, but they also allow the cells to create their own deuterium-depleted water. And that is really how diet helps mitochondria. But exercise and other stuff, I want to hear from Rich.
Throw me on the spot while I'm still gasping for breath. I just did a 40-minute high-intensity spin with a friend of mine who's a really good athlete. So I stupidly agreed to to go on a ride for him on the indoor trainer, and he's absolutely gassed me. So big shout out to Lee McCarroll. Yeah, I think you guys have nailed it. I mean, the only thing I'd like to add to that is NAD plus and NADH and CERT1. We have a limited amount of NAD plus. Every time we process something for energy, NAD plus is depleted, and we can't get it back. But this ratio is reduced every time we process something for fuel. So glucose, for example, for every 1 glucose molecule we process, we will use up or deplete 4 NAD plus. And we want more NAD plus to NADH. And if you can imagine, we've got X amount during our lifespan. And as we go through time, this amount is reduced and reduced and reduced until we have nothing left, and the mitochondria can no longer function properly, and we inevitably die. But if glucose depletes this ratio, so when people look at high intensity training, and they will argue, in fact, I had somebody on Facebook today mentioning about it doesn't matter what diet you live, as long as it's it's got to be sustainable. And yes, but what people don't understand is whenever you're consuming excess carbohydrates, it may confer a benefit in regards to high intensity or a burst of energy, or act in the way that a drug does, because that's what carbohydrate, that's what sugar is essentially. And it may confer a benefit during an event, whether it be power or long distance, etc. But people will argue, well, I'm not gaining any weight because I'm outworking that caloric value. But it goes well beyond that, because every time you're consuming these carbohydrates, that glucose is depleting this NAD plus to NADH ratio. So 1 glucose molecule costs the body 4 NAD plus. Beta hydroxybutyrate gets way more bang for the buck, arguably twice as much energy. And this is open for debate, but the cost to beta hydroxybutyrate, the cost for 1 BHB molecule is 1. Therefore, improving that ratio by 400%. So it goes well beyond outperforming or working off whatever caloric, and it isn't the calories, and we've discussed this a million times, and we can go into this again and again, but whatever that mass or that energy value is that you've consumed, it's the damage that's happening behind the scene, the damage to this NAD plus to NADH ratio, which is crucial for the function of the mitochondria. So beta hydroxybutyrate, the master ketone body, is far superior, not just for health, well-being, or athletic performance, but almost every aspect of health and well-being, at least I believe.
Well, that was amazing, actually. And in the meantime, Rachel Brown, Dr. Rachel Brown, has snuck in the back door. So, hi, Rachel. We're just talking about mitochondria.
Hello. How is everyone?
Good, thank you. You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you.
Yeah, we were just talking about mitochondrial. Well, actually, the question was, can exercise improve mitochondrial function and efficiency? And yes, because it stimulates, biogenesis, and it improves the turnover of cells, basically. As simple as that. So yeah. Did anyone else? Rachel's not, but the other Rachel. So we'll go on to another question, shall we? I hope that was liked, the answer there. Have you spotted any questions?
I think, Ben, did you want to jump on that as well?
Yeah, on the subject of
Sorry, Ben.
of diet, not eating is also helpful for dry fasting. When you dry fast and you're not putting water into your body, it forces your cells to rely on their own cellular water, so mitochondrial, naturally deuterium depleted water. And so that's why, for example, camels have humps full of fat as well, because they metabolize that fat in the mitochondria, which releases deuterium depleted water. And it's also, apparently, according to legend, it's why if you're going to cross the desert on your own, you don't buy a camel, you buy a horse, because you can look at a horse and figure out how old it is and how near the scrap heap it is. Whereas camels are ugly when they're young and they remain ugly, but a camel could be a week from dropping down dead, and there's no way of telling. And part of that could be because they are naturally very deuterium efficient. It's also why the Vietnamese boat people were, when they were found in the hulls of these ships, they were hanging onto jars of kind of rancid fish oil. They were hydrating with the fat. And why workers in the Mediterranean, like a harvest, will actually chug on olive oil, not on water, because it's more hydrating. So one other thing in terms of, so to hydrate yourself, literally not drinking, ironically, is very, very useful. But also you can, the lowest deuterium foodstuff pretty much that we know of, other than artificially deuterium depleted water, which is damn expensive, is pork lard. Pig fat is, because every animal has mechanisms within it, like in the red blood cells will do it and whatever. You have multiple mechanisms for removing deuterium from the system, because it breaks mitochondria, it breaks that spinning turnstile on there. So every animal has several mechanisms to remove the deuterium safely. It comes out in your breath and whatever. But when fat is stored in the body, it's already been through those processes, right? So lard is number one, and then tallow and stuff like that, and anything really to do with the plant's reproductive system. So grains, fruits, anything sugary is naturally going to be higher in deuterium. So yeah, it's another vote for staying off the sugars, and just try upping the fat and using fat to hydrate instead of water, because it does work.
Yeah, I think Tim Noakes did a brilliant book called Waterlogged, actually, talking about athletic performance. I think possibly, Ben was tapping into that. I don't know if you'd read that book, but athletic performance, he was looking at endurance runners in particular, because that's his thing, but also cyclists and other sports. And all the top performers were allegedly dehydrated. They were running better. No pun intended. They were running better. They were being more efficient with less water intake. So I think there's something there. Although, the problem with camels is they've always got the ump. So anyway, right.
Oh, stop
Phil.
it. Yeah. No, one quick thing after what Ben said is, about hydrating and whatever with fats and then being very low in deuterium. Also said something fascinating. I wish we should make it public. It was in the Human Unleashed ages ago, but we interviewed Laszlo Boros a couple of times. And the second time we interviewed him, he sent me this message early in the day before we interviewed him, saying, "I've got some great stuff. I've got a real scoop." And he'd seen some kind of proof, or somebody had done some paper or whatever on it, something he'd been suspecting and trying to prove for ages, that when you take in seed oils are very high in deuterium, as well as all the other issues, but a lot of people haven't spotted this one. They're very high in deuterium. But when you take in deuterium via sort of sugary foods and all the processed stuff and fruit and whatever, the body can get rid of it. But apparently when you take it in via seed oils, the body can't get rid of it. And you basically have to just wait it out for autophagy and apoptosis to sort it out, blow up the cells. So sort of dry fasting would be the sort of way to get it out. But so many people are full of seed oils that they actually can't deplete deuterium from those seed oils in the same way as they can deplete it if it comes through carbohydrates. And, I reckon this is one of the main reasons why these seed oils are so carcinogenic. But nobody's kind of spotted that one, apart from Laszlo. But anyway, that was a little bit after what Ben said.
That was fab. That was really good. Poor old Rachel, she's popped in and not said anything. Do you want to add to that, Rachel, or do you want to move on?
I can just add briefly, which is my immediate thought was in my line of work in psychiatry, we sometimes get people who are acutely suicidal or have other issues going on, and every so often someone stops eating and drinking, and it's just a reflection that since I've known about my mitochondria more in terms of them producing deuterium depleted water, then I just have a much more lackadaisical attitude to it. So around me, people tend to be getting anxious if somebody hasn't had something to drink for a day or so. Whereas, yeah, I think once you realize what's going on in the body, then we don't necessarily need to worry quite so much. Although having said that, probably most people we see don't have very good mitochondrial function for other reasons.
I think it is interesting that, you know, we do go against our own instincts sometimes, because I feel so much better when I'm fasted. And it's so ingrained, isn't it, that you're supposed to eat a certain amount of times per day or breakfast, and, you know, the social constraints. So here I am being super smooth. How many meals on average a day does everyone eat? Let's play pass the parcel, Team GB style. Okay, so we'll do the thing, we'll do the clockwise. So I'll start and I'll say, I don't have an answer to that, because some days I eat twice a day. Some days I eat 3 times a day. Sometimes I eat once, and sometimes I don't eat. So I think you did say average. So I would say I'm on average 2 MAD. I feel better on OMAD, but supercharged when I fast. So, but the quantity probably is the same. So if I have 3 meals, it'll probably be 3 small meals. If I have OMAD, then it's, you know, a massive feast. I'm adapted to this, so I think I can do that. So that's my answer. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I'd say over the last nearly 4 years that I've been on a carnivorous diet, I'd say I've averaged 4 meals per day. When I say 4 meals, I mean actual meals, not just like a cup of coffee with a little bit of butter in it. I'm talking like an actual meal where you're eating meat with some eggs and some cheese. But I'm a heavy guy. I need a lot of food. I can do 3 meals per day. I'd say for the most part, I don't feel quite as good doing it. That's just my own individual, unique experience. I'd say overall, you know, people I've spoken to tend to be on about 2 meals per day. That seems to be the average. But then some people, I know Steve and perhaps Phil as well, they'll alternate 1 meal, 2 meal, 1 meal, 2 meal. So that's my take on it. But there's not a exact answer. I'll just be thinking, if someone's eating more meals than me, they better be much, much bigger than me and much more active than me. Well, I don't see a reason to eat 6 meals per day, guys. And I think once you hit that satiety each point after each meal, the extra meal doesn't really come as useful. So that's pretty much my take on it. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same as Stephen, between 0 and 3. I would say also I average 2. Breakfast would be 500 grams of 20% fat mince, quite often with bone marrow added or black pudding added. And I know it's boring, but it's the same for lunch normally. And then if my missus has done something amazing at work, because she works in a cookery school where she teaches butchery and charcuterie, then we might in the evening, but very often I can just sail straight through to the following day. And sometimes 1 big breakfast is enough to see me all the way through, unless I'm fasting.
Rachel.
Okay, I'm pretty much 2 meals a day on average, although it does vary a bit. So occasionally at weekends, I might have a sort of snack type thing in the middle of the day, because I tend to do breakfast and then eat when I get in from work. There was something that came up in social media recently. So there was a lot of chat about intermittent fasting and skipping breakfast. And I agree that a lot of the hype about breakfast being the most important meal of the day did come from Kellogg's and the cereal industry. And I don't necessarily agree with that. However, as a female, I did intermittent fasting, and I think I did it wrong for me for quite a long time, which was skipping breakfast and not eating until lunchtime. And I felt as though I really tanked my hormones doing that. And yeah, just knowing a bit more about circadian health now than I did back then, I would usually suggest to people that they try to eat something in the morning if they're planning on having 1 or 2 meals a day, just because it is a secondary signaler to your circadian clocks. So that's me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. On that, it might also be worth mentioning that it's important to eat early if you're trying to hack your leptin back into proper balance as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty much 0 to 3, but again, generally 2. It'll be 1 today. I haven't eaten yet today, so when I get home, that will be. Having said that, I may have a big meal and then eat more again later. I don't buy into this eating early enough for your food to go down before you go to bed. I find that I don't sleep if I don't eat close to bedtime. And I look at nature when it comes to that. I look at the cheetah or the leopard or the lion who catches his prey and then naps straight after. Yeah, if I don't eat close to bedtime, then unless I'm fasting, then I struggle to sleep. But generally too, again, the fasting thing, Rachel made a fantastic point. We've been told for a long time, we should skip breakfast. And it's been shown with the evidence that eating breakfast is generally better. However, it didn't work for me. So I think it comes back to everyone as an individual. If I eat a meal early in the morning, I'm ravenous all day and I can't stop, regardless of what I eat, I can't stop thinking about food and I'm hungry and I feel lethargic. And if I skip breakfast, everything functions a lot better for me. So sometimes, the science is there as a guide, but I think we've also got to listen. So try everything, listen to your own body. If eating breakfast works best for you, fantastic. I function a lot better if I don't eat breakfast. And as far as fasting goes, if people ask me, do I fast? My answer is always no. I don't fast. I just eat intuitively. It just so happens that I'm currently 23 hours fasted. Or in fact, 8 o'clock, I'm 23 and a half hours fasted. But I haven't done that intentionally. So I don't fast. I just eat intuitively. Unless, I have a reason to do an extended fast. But generally, I tend to throw in a 72-hour once or twice a year. For me, I don't believe there's any benefit going much beyond that, especially if you are keto adapted or carnivore for long periods of time. Max autophagy can be achieved in 2 to 3 days. I did a fantastic interview with Ben Azadi a few years back, and he references 5 days as being max autophagy. But I think it's dependent on how long you've been living the lifestyle for. For us, 2 to 3 days is probably max autophagy, but brilliant for chucking in once or twice a year. Beyond that, yeah, I'm generally too mad.
Yeah, me too. 1 to 2 meals. Just it's quite often 2 meals one day and then 1 meal the next day, because I kind of get hungry maybe 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and then the next day I won't get hungry till about 2 o'clock. But I don't eat. I mean, I think it's fine if you're okay with that to eat before bed and eat any time. But I think from a sort of inside view of autoimmunity, even the best food eaten late at night that isn't sort of digested can cause a reaction. And I think it's absolutely fine to eat it when your gut is in a good shape and whatever. Eat whenever you want. But if I get hungry in the evening, I tend to leave it until the next morning, which doesn't really matter, when you're fat adapted. And then, as Andrew Scarborough here, hello Andrew again, points out in the chat, if eating real food, especially just meat and fat, it's probably best to eat when hungry. Just that most people don't know what genuine physiological hunger feels like. And that's true. They just know about hangriness. They remember what it was like with carbs and how you get hungry every 5 minutes. And it's just not the same. The hunger isn't the same. So you just kind of ignore it and go to bed. But that's from an autoimmune point of view. If you're eating late at night, you get some kind of bit of inflammation that kicks off overnight. Try and eat earlier in the day. I mean, Jack Cruz is always saying we should always eat, when it's light outside. But again, I'm not really sure about that, because, ancestrally, whenever we killed something, we'd drag it home and eat it. And was that always, in the light every time? Probably not. So, yeah, I think just, eat according to hunger and that's it. Yeah, but avoid late nights if you are autoimmune till the gut's healed up. The 40-year carnivore says here in the chat, I can drink up to 2 gallons of water daily. I just mentioning Laszlo Boros again, he used to do courses called Washing Away Your Health, of people drinking far too much water and, filling the cells up with deuterium from the water. If you need to drink that much water a day, I don't know, something else is going on. Maybe put a little bit of salt in it or something, or do some salt shots and get some hydration together, because when you're fat adapted, you really shouldn't need to drink 2 gallons of water a day. And if people are drinking loads of water a day because they think they should and they're not thirsty, well, it's a real big myth that we have to drink tons of water. You know, just get up in the morning and drink 2 liters of water, and it's all bollocks. It is. So drink when you're thirsty and eat when you're hungry, and that's about it, isn't it? Really, we can all go home now.
It really is that simple. When I was doing my phlebotomy, we used to do urine analysis, and the amount of people I had to say, look, you are drinking too much. This literally is just so clear. It should be light straw coloured. I mean, it's well known that that's the colour of your urine. It should be light straw coloured. If it is clear, you're drinking too much water, and if it's dark, you're not drinking enough. And it's really straightforward. But of course, I'm not going to get into the history of how this was hijacked, but it was from a 1954 military study where the 8 glasses of water myth came from. But anyway, right, I liked this going round. I think that really worked, actually. So I've started quite a few questions. So we'll go through. Because Jonathan's the main man, we do seem to be getting a lot of training questions, but that's fine. So lifting to failure, I will give you a 1-sentence answer, and then we'll get more nuanced as we go round, I think. But once a week man, last week Jonathan briefly mentioned about lifting to failure. Could he and the panel elaborate on what failure is? I'm new to weightlifting. Okay, my take on it is you try to do something and you can't do it anymore. So if it's a bicep curl, you know, and you're trying to do a bicep curl, a partial rep, I don't call failure. I call failure you just physically can't even get a partial rep. If you do 100 of these and it takes you, 100 to get to the point where you can't move your arms, you probably got the weights too light. So that's me being really basic, but I'm going to move. I like this going round, and obviously if you want to skip a turn, just say I'd like to skip a turn. But that's me on that one.
Yeah, nice. I've got a video I made about 6 months ago now. It's something like how to train to failure 3 ways, something like that. It's about a 5-6 minute long video. I recommend checking that one out. You've got momentary muscular failure, you've got technical muscular failure, concentric, isometric, and eccentric muscular failure. So there's about 5 definitions. But I think Stephen is absolutely correct. It's when you can't move the weight anymore, and that's the kind of methodology I usually get most people to apply to their training. So, for example, you push the weight, bench press, chest press, push the weight until you can no longer push it. It's stuck there. It's just grinding out your hands are shaking, the bar shaking. Then you can no longer hold it any longer. So you can't even hold it in that position. It just lowers. You lower it as slow as you can. And if you can no longer move the weight, without using inertia, extra body language, that's how I'd probably define muscular failure. But I wouldn't say there's such thing as absolute muscular failure, because that would involve you crushing yourself with your weight. And I'm quite keen to point that one out, because people say they train to absolute failure. And I think if you can't do that on a bench press, because you'll die, the weight will squash you. So there's 5 definitions you could use. They're all pretty much the same thing, just the greatest degree of muscular failure is met when you can no longer push, hold, or lower the weight any slower than physically possible. But I'm interested to hear what the other guy's take is.
Yeah, I've got a very, very simple 1-sentence definition as well. It's what it isn't is I've done 9. I don't think I've got another one in me. That's not failure. You've got to try the next one and not be able to do it. You've got to show that you can't do it. That's all I've got. That's all I have to say about that.
Are we going around that way? Yes, for me, I notice a huge difference, in people. You see people, when I used to run a gym, and you see people walking away from the squat bar, and they sort of walk forwards and they put it back on the rack and they turn around and they go, "Whoa, that was hard." I thought, no, if it was hard, you wouldn't be able to move. You'd be on the floor blowing chunks and stuff. You wouldn't be able to talk. That's not a proper set of squats. I think that failure on squats and stuff like that is kind of different, because it's just so hideous. I was obsessed with 20 rep squats at one point. you know, and I always say that, you know, if you can do body weight and a half for 20 reps squats, you're going to see a huge difference in your physique, huge difference. But a lot of people don't have the fortitude to go for that. Really, it's a mental issue. I've got an article out there called The Psychology of the 20 Rep Squat. I think I wrote it in about 1998, and it's still going around places online. It was for Hard Gainer magazine. But for actual the definition of failure, again, I'd like to see Jonathan's article. I'm gonna, or the video that he did on that. I'm gonna have to watch that, but it's interesting. Say, for example, I mean, yeah, bench press, you will get squashed, but not if you use a power rack. I always use a power rack. So train on your own, and then you can, you know, set it so that it can't touch your neck. So you can maybe touch your chest, but you can't touch your neck. So you don't get in that terrible thing where if you look up on YouTube, these people getting trapped under bench presses, you know, and almost throttling themselves, or maybe sometimes actually doing it. But to me, a sort of bench press is difficult. But say for example, how I do chins or pull-ups, I love going to complete and utter failure on those. So I'll start off, I'll just put one up in the doorway, and I'll have a chair nearby because I don't have any weights anymore. I just do body weight stuff. But I'll do chins until I can't pull myself up. Then I'll kind of kick up a bit from the floor. No, I'll put my foot on a chair, and then you can assist some reps. And then you can sort of kick yourself up and do negatives so that you can't pull yourself up, but you can actually slow yourself down slightly until you can't move at all. And then you kind of do reverse shrugs. So you're squeezing your shoulder blades together when the biceps have gone. And then you sort of get it even further into the lats. And so you can play around with that kind of thing where you can go into, you know, complete failure on all the muscles concerned. And a lot of people, when you see them training, and when you see people who go to the gym, you know, year in, year out, and their physiques don't change, and they're doing exactly the same weights pretty much, and they just sort of sit there and bench, you know, without a power rack on their own. They'll do a few reps and put it back. And you know, I really think that the failure thing, I don't understand this thing of not going to failure and then still growing. Maybe you can do that if you're on the gear or something, but I think it's really essential as far as I've seen, and it makes a huge difference. But you've got to learn how to do it. But you know, there are some things you can push that way. You can do it with bench press if you have a spotter. You know, you can get somebody to assist you and whatever, and then you can do negatives safely. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways, weird ways around it. You can go even further into failure. So that's me anyway.
Yeah, nothing to add to that. I think you guys have covered everything.
Likewise.
Well, you caught me out there. I was looking at the comments. I'm going to just put a couple on that. I think just generally good feedback. Landa says, after listening to Phil and Rachel Brown on dairy, I tried milk in my coffee instead of cream. They were both right. It must create an insulin response. A few hours later, I was craving carbs. Yeah, well, there's milk sugars, isn't there? So, talking about that, let's go to the next question.
Yeah, just so you know how we say that sugar sucrose is a fructose molecule and a glucose molecule bound together. Well, lactose in cow milk, we get more of it in cow milk, is a glucose molecule and a galactose molecule joined together. So they will be separated. So basically half of the sugar in normal milk is glucose, and you will get an insulin response.
That's cool. Thank you very much. I've got the next question here. We're really getting into the weeds with some of it. Good evening, Keto Carnivore panel. Is it possible to get a glucose spike from eating bacon? I crave carbs a few hours after eating it. And can we go the other way? Can we get Rachel in and then go the other way, just for fun?
Okay. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what everyone else says about this. My initial thought is just how much of it are you eating in one go? Is there sugar added to the bacon that you're consuming? Because quite a lot of bacons, you really need to read the label. because quite a lot have sugar added in the cure, and the carb count can vary according to brand. Otherwise, I don't know, some people worry about protein, like overdoing the protein in one sitting, although I have to say bacon tends to be fairly fatty, so I wouldn't be so concerned about that. And then I just wonder about the salt content and levels of hydration and minerals otherwise, and is there something else going on there? If you consume a lot of bacon that's very salty, does it somehow impact on your taste buds and initiate cravings? But I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I was working with a customer recently who had a similar issue. And when we broke it down and looked at the source of their bacon, it was a poor quality supermarket bought bacon that contained seed oils. I think the quality of the fat is incredibly important. I would suggest trying butcher bought bacon. And again, I think it comes back to the higher linoleic acid content. So pork carries around 20% linoleic acid compared to 2% in beef. But then the argument still remains the same. Is it the linoleic acid or the fact that it's oxidized? And you could argue that fresh bacon is non-oxidized. I eat a lot of bacon. I don't fear the higher linoleic acid content in fresh bacon, and I find that it doesn't do me any injustice. But if I eat processed or old bacon, aged bacon, it causes all of those effects with me. So I would look at the source and the quality of the bacon.
Yeah, I don't know about the triggering that kind of a response, but again, I'll give it from the autoimmune aspect that I really don't think it's ideal. I think it's fine if you can take it as, if your gut's good and everything's working fine. But pork tends to give quite a horrible reaction to a lot of people if they're autoimmune. If I ever get a client and they come along and they say, I'm carnivore and it's not working, or I've got these problems, I always find it's pork, chicken, dairy, or eggs is the problem. And then if they go back to fatty beef and lamb only, everything's completely different. There's also an article that was there ages ago. I mean, Richard's covered the linoleic acid content of pork, and because it's often the pigs are fed just rubbish, aren't they? They're fed soy and grains and all sorts of things. But there's an article, if you put in 0 carb Zen pork, they've got other sort of issues with pork that people have, where it sort of thickens up the blood and people feel pretty shitty straight after eating it. And a lot of people find that. So I don't know if it's, some effect that somebody's having from bacon that isn't to do with that particular response. It could be something else. I don't know. But I don't find it ideal anyway.
Do you know, I think sorry, Ben, really quickly, I think you've made a fantastic point. It's I get my bacon from a local farm, and they feed their pigs all the offcuts of food. They don't feed it grain. And I find it works really well with me. So I think it could be exactly to do with what you say, what the animal is fed. And as you rightly say, I agree completely. Beef and lamb seem to be the only animal proteins, even within the carnivore space, that do not elicit any reaction. And I would, Stephen and I have had this conversation a couple of times, I would argue lamb is probably better than beef. And that's probably something we can have a debate on one day. Although I'm sure you guys will probably agree when you look at the amino profile, vitamin and mineral profile, the only argument would be the higher linoleic acid content. But if it's grass-fed and fresh, I think that all of the other benefits outweigh. We're in this society where everything's grass-fed beef, and I think it's an American thing. But I've been gravitating more and more to lamb, and I don't know if it's just placebo, but I feel a lot better. I don't put it down to the higher fat content because I've always eaten chuck steak or casserole steak, so it's an incredibly fatty cut of beef. But yeah, lamb, fatty cuts of lamb seem to be working incredibly well for me. So beef and lamb.
Yeah, just before Ben goes in, just on the pork thing. Sorry, Ben. I was talking to Zofia ages ago from Paleo Medicina, and we were talking about this, and she says, oh yes, pork is wonderful, great fatty acid profile and all of this sort of thing, and very high fat, great for Paleolithic ketogenic diet, the PKD thing. And I said to her, yeah, but you're talking about those Mangalitsa pigs that you've got in Hungary there, and they're eating all the stuff they're supposed to eat, whereas in England the pigs are fed on a whole load of shite. And she said, yeah, okay, fair enough. If you're in England and you're autoimmune, don't eat pork. But anyway, Ben, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Before Ben, can I just say, Ben, it's your turn.
Yeah, first thing I'll say is just to check that you're not having your bacon as part of a Paul Saladino special ultimate burger combo, which is bacon cheeseburger doused in honey as well. So just want to check on that. And it's not like
it's just one piece of bacon in between two whole pineapples, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah. If in doubt, I mean, look, I'm lucky, guys, because my missus works in butchery and in charcuterie, so we make our own bacon. We haven't bought bacon from a shop for years. In fact, Phil, last time you were around here, we started curing some bacon. It's very, very easy to do. You get a bag of nitrite cure. You weigh it out like 1.5% or something like that. Chuck it in a bag, seal the bag like a Ziploc bag, put it in the fridge, turn it every day for 2 weeks, and then it's done. You can then, if you wish, cold smoke it. The hardest part of it is actually slicing it up. You either need, an incredible knife, or you need a proper decent slicer, and a lot of the ones they sell for home use aren't very good. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, I was just going to say the same as Phil about the Mangalitsa. Yeah. So and by the way, also the cut that you want is, well, there's two. You can have back bacon, or you can have it off the belly. So, but yeah, making your own bacon is not too challenging. So if you love bacon, give it a try.
Yeah, one quick thing here. Andrew has said in the chat, what about Iberico? Well, I just say, try it and see how you feel, because I was disappointed recently because, Andrew, you were there. In fact, I think you were actually standing there at the time, but Sophia came out with some, after that lunch that was inedible, Sophia came out with some of the bison or buffalo sausages from Eskimo Kitchen in Hungary, and she had a load of those she brought with her, and they were so nice. But when I got back, I thought, right, I'm going to order a load of stuff from Eskimo Kitchen, and it took ages to turn up in England, but it was a lot of their pork stuff. Like they make this amazing pate out of pork crackling and stuff, and it's all completely PKD approved and whatever. And I ate so much of it. I thought, I'm just going to sit down and have a feast on this stuff. It was so nice. Got a load of the sausages as well, all kinds of stuff. And I still didn't do well on it. I just didn't feel right on it. And that was the best pork you can possibly get from Mangalitsa pigs from Hungary. So I'd say just, I just don't get on with it. I love it. I don't have so much problem with bacon. But if I eat roast pork or something, and I wish I could, because I could eat crackling all day long, every day. It's just the nicest thing in the world. But it doesn't do well with me. Is it because I've got autoimmunity in my background? I don't know. But a lot of people who don't have that say they don't do well on pork. But even the stuff from Eskimo Kitchen, and that's not to diss Eskimo Kitchen, because it's gorgeous stuff. And if you don't have a problem with pork, go and order some, because it's fantastic. But for me, if I ever order it again, it's going to be the bison one, and it's not going to be the pork stuff. So there we go.
Yeah, nice. I've got a different take to all of you guys. I think everything you've said is very valid, and that's probably what I would have said as well. But my take is that it probably has something to do with not the food itself that you're eating, but the quantities of different macronutrients that you're taking in. What I'm thinking is perhaps, if you think of bacon, it's very high in fat in terms of the macronutrient content, much higher than a lot of things. A lot of that fat will actually render off into the pan. So my thought is maybe this person is having the bacon, but not having the fat, it's rendering off in the pan, the lard. What I'd probably suggest is cooking the bacon first, taking the bacon out, get your eggs, scramble them, whatever, in the lard, then eat the lard as well. I notice with a lot of people, they tend to feel like not quite satiated off of foods. And it's usually because they're not eating the fat with the food. So in pretty much all of my diet plans I give out to people, I say, eat all the fat that comes out of the pan, pour it back over the food. It could be that you're eating, in theory, a high-fat meal, but in actuality, you're not actually eating all the fat in it. And that's meaning that you've got a surplus of protein. Your body doesn't have the fat substrate to provide you with energy for whatever you have to do in the day. And therefore, that protein is being transmuted into glucose. So gluconeogenesis is demand and supply driven. The reason I say this is because if you eat 700 grams of protein, the additional 400, 500, 600 grams of protein that you're taking in above what your baseline needs are would have to be transmuted into something else. It doesn't just disappear. The amino acids just don't disappear out your system. You also don't have a pool of amino acids in your blood that can store that much protein in a single hit. So my thought is that you're not eating enough fat, and that's why the protein is being used as a substrate for energy, and therefore in that period of time when you've got more of a demand for your body, you're probably not meeting your energy demands. I'd actually look at that aspect of it as well, and that's of course with the things that the other guys have said. So checking the glucose, the sugar content of the food. The other things as well, like maybe you don't tolerate pork that well. Maybe your body's saying, I haven't met my satiety level at that point yet, so I've not reached my nutrient requirement with that given food. Maybe your body just doesn't tolerate it well. There's loads of different angles you can take there, but I'm interested to hear what Stephen thinks.
Well, I'm thinking that we spent a lot of time on bacon, but I think everyone is correct there. Of course, what you've missed is, did the piggy eat roast beef or did it eat none? Did it go to market? I mean, we just don't know. But it is down to whatever the little piggy did. Right, so here we go. Phil D. It was. Sorry, Jonathan. There's just too much about bacon. I agree with everybody, to be honest. And I love the rendered fat thing. I was just adding a bit of humour because we talked about bacon for so long. Phil D. 2 parts to this. Hi guys, I love carnivore, but always end up going back to carbs. So you shouldn't really be watching this. You should be sitting on the naughty step. I cycle a fair bit, commute and turbo train, and after a few weeks I can't seem to push out 30 watts due to real pain in the quads. Is that because I've lost water, and in brackets glycogen, not drinking enough, or overweight and adaptation takes a long time? Adding carbs, I'm back to normal in a couple of days. So do we still want to circle around? We can go start with Jonathan this time.
I'll probably just say the only guarantee you have of never being fat adapted is to start eating carbs again. As bad as that sounds, as abrupt and rude and nonchalant that sounds, but the truth is, if you're still eating carbs, you'll never actually maximize your fat adaptation process. What I'd recommend doing is just transitioning slowly to it in terms of getting your fat in. I'd look at your macros. I'd actually try and find a way to weigh out your food. If you're a performance athlete, the chances are that you're looking at these sort of things and measuring what you're taking in anyway. Not a necessity, but it's helpful if you're concerned about exercise performance. I'd definitely be transitioning every period of about 4 to 8 weeks, adding in fat and reducing the carbs. In the meanwhile, I would actually recommend a product, not affiliated, but I do recommend a product by Richard, and that is Keto Pro pre-workout. It has something called citrulline in it, taurine, and a few other nice little ingredients. For myself, I'm not an endurance athlete, so I can't really speak much on that, but I will say the taurine in that has been very beneficial towards my training performance. I notice lower blood pressure when exercise, my resting heart rate is lower, I sleep better, my gut permeability is a lot less, and hydration is overall a lot better. So if you're concerned about glycogen and hydration, I'd look at that as well. But that's my 2 cents. What about you guys?
I'm locking me. I'll pass to Phil.
We did just all I see is that fat adaptation is fairly quick in somebody who is sort of sedentary or whatever, but it can take an awful lot longer. And I think this is why in athletes, or I think this is a reason why a lot of people don't go for it, sort of pro athletes and whatever. I think a lot of people know about it, but they can't sort of afford to take that time out to get really adapted to have much better results down the line. But a lot of people are doing it and they're seeing far better results than when they were eating the carbs. But it's that period where you've got to adapt, and it just takes a bit longer to adapt to fat burning as an athlete than it does to just generally wandering around and watching Netflix and stuff. So that's all I got.
Now then, what was I doing before we came on air? I was on the Stages bike, which is similar to a turbo trainer. Only this year I started cycling. As you can see, I've come from a bodybuilding background. Prior to that, I was clinically obese and type 2 diabetic. I retired from bodybuilding last year, and I decided to start running and cycling because I was working with Ironmen, elite athletes, runners. One of the cyclists that I work with he competes for a pro team, but he's not a professional himself. He's a semi-pro. I'm not allowed to give his name because he will be ostracized from the community. A few months ago, he pushed out, I think it was 369 watts average for 4 hours at 92% of VO2 max, completely fasted on nothing but electrolytes. So it is possible. The guys are 100% accurate. And I've gone through exactly the same thing that you are describing, that excruciating pain in your legs. One day you can put an incredible effort in, and then for the next couple of weeks, your legs are dead to the world. And there's a few things. So the effort that I've just done, I've come off there today. My effort, I think, was at maybe 200 watts, 220 average. Last week, I pushed out a 280 watt FTP for an hour, which gives me, at my current weight, 4 watts per kilogram, which anyone in the cycling world will tell you that that's not too shabby, considering this is my first year of cycling. We need to upregulate specific enzymes and pathways within the body. So it's all of the issues that you just mentioned, but the monocarboxylate transporters need to be upregulated, and it can take an awful long time. To do this, we need to practice on high intensity stuff. So what I'd suggest to do is have one high intensity session followed by maybe 2 or 3 zone 2 cycles. Electrolytes are incredibly important. We need to replace that lost fluid with quality electrolytes, potassium and sodium in particular. Thanks for the shout out, Jonathan, appreciate that. There is a product that is even better at doing this, which is exogenous ketones. Exogenous ketones will block that inflammation within the legs. I did the Ironman loop in Wales recently, 112 miles, and I'm not training for Ironman. I went with the guys who were competing in Ironman, and I completed the 112 miles from stepping up from no further than 40 miles prior to that, completely fasted on nothing but electrolytes and exogenous ketones. The inflammation in your legs caused by a number of reasons. One of the questions that I would put forward to you, do you drink coffee? If you're a coffee drinker, try taking the coffee out. The acrylamide is highly inflammatory, especially when you're trying to adapt. It's going to cause all sorts of inflammatory issues, especially in the quads when cycling. So there's a couple of takeaways there, I guess, isn't there? It's obviously we need to be hydrated. The electrolytes, you could potentially look at the supplementation, but adaptation is key. It is going to take an awful long time, but you will be able to push stupid amounts of watts for an incredibly long time. But to put that in perspective, when I started, I think my average watts maybe were 120 possibly, and now my FTP is at 280, which isn't too shabby, I think, for someone who's new to cycling. But adaptation, time is key, consistency is key.
Rachel, did you want to speak?
Nothing more to add to that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, one before you go, because I know you're very busy, and it's you haven't had much chance to talk. What is your speciality, and where is Carnivore fitting in what you do?
Oh gosh, so I feel like I have a bit of a dual existence. So I'm NHS, just working as a general adult psychiatrist, and I work with people in crisis. So I work in a crisis home treatment team, and that's what I've been doing for a couple of decades now, not within the crisis team, but just psychiatry in general. But my main interest is in functional medicine and root cause medicine, really, because I don't think the way the health service and the medical education system is set up is good at all in terms of trying to address underlying causes of illness. So I'm also doing some private work as a functional medicine sort of doctor. It's tended to be people with mental health problems who've come to me, but I've just recently set that up, so I haven't been doing that long enough to see what other people will be coming along. But yeah, I'm very interested in gut health, particularly in autoimmune disorders, and all sorts of stuff. So taurine, when Jonathan was mentioning it, is hugely beneficial in terms of mental health as well. So just there are lots of natural options out there for people, is what I want people to know. And carnivore, I would love it if everybody wanted to try carnivore who comes to me. In terms of my NHS work, it tends to be ketogenic diets that I tend to speak to people about first. Although I have had someone fairly recently who was trying carnivore, somebody with a major mental illness and colitis as well. So yeah, I think carnivore is one of the most ideal diets for people to optimize their mental health and the rest of their health.
Because I was expecting a few more mental health questions, but I think we've been, I think because this was Jonathan's baby, you know, we've got a lot of training questions.
Apologies, guys.
Just for people in the future to know that, you know, mental health, you can ask questions about that. It's not just about training and eating lots of protein. Did you want to answer a question, this one, before you go? I know you've got to go. A few of us have agreed to sort of do another 10, 15 minutes, but Nancy there's asking, when does autophagy start? I wondered if we could, do you want to have a bash at that, Rachel?
Oh, actually, I don't know if I can be totally accurate off the top of my head, but I welcome listening to everyone else.
Okay.
Can I jump in before anyone else? I know this is going to have lots of differences in opinion. I think context matters. It depends how long you've been living the lifestyle. But if we look at it from a basic level, we've got mTOR and AMPK, and they work in a seesaw effect against each other. You see all sorts of figures from around 12 hours, 16 hours, 24, and different levels of autophagy leading up to max autophagy. I would argue that if the mTOR reset is 3.5 to 4 hours, that as this balance shifts, then autophagy is going to start in some form or another about 4 hours. Now, I know that may seem incredibly low to most people, but it does make a lot of sense. One of them has got to be predominating, and I'm not saying that is optimal. Personally, I think, you know, around 12 is where we start to get the ball rolling, especially if you've been living the lifestyle for a long time. But I would argue that as mTOR is coming down, AMPK is coming back up, and we're in that state of autophagy a lot sooner than one would think, especially if we are living a ketogenic and carnivore lifestyle, which is devoid of all of the nasties, which is going to prevent us from eliciting that response so quickly. But keen to hear everyone else's opinion, but I thought I'd jump in there with that one first.
Well, I just put something in the chat, which is it's pretty much always, because it's happening in the mitochondria now. I mean, right now, whether you've eaten or not. You know, so what Richard was saying, you know, and I think getting bogged down into fasting for 12 hours, because I'm now going to get into autophagy, it's levels of autophagy. I mean, the longer you fast, the more autophagy there'll be. It really is that simple. And I think I'm hoping that what this team will do is bring different ways of speaking to this. And some people love the science. I'm very basic. I think, what do you want out of this, and what's a practical thing to say, you know? So, but I think there's a lot of ways of answering this, but I just think the longer you're not eating, the higher the levels of autophagy will be. 18 hours seems to really be a great period for a lot of people because they can manage to fast for 18 hours. I think that's why, you know, I've done a 72-hour fast, and I'm going to thank Phil actually for talking about dry fasting. Because if you want to accelerate everything, dry fasting, I honestly think is about 3 times as powerful as just fasting, liquid fasting. So let's get to the next question. As we're all going to do an extra 15 minutes, I think we're doing this. Let's have a look. And if you spot better questions than I'm spotting, then please do that. When trying to do body recomposition on a carnivore diet, is it normal, stroke expected, to feel hungry sometimes, or is it a sign of under-eating? I think that's a great question. I eat a mix of animals, carnivore diet, 2 meals a day. Thank you.
Oh God, this question, this like question we had earlier about how many meals we eat a day. I honestly don't think we could really invent the wheel. I just eat when you're hungry. Now, it's a useful if you're trying to do something your body's not naturally meant to do. Now, if you give someone, you know, a load of meat, fish, eggs, what have you, and say eat what you want, chances are after a while or a few weeks of doing that, they'll just eat what they need to maintain their body weight for whatever their natural body fat set point is meant to be and whatever functions they need to do each day. I think if you're trying to swift yourself in favor of being very lean and muscular, like a bodybuilder physique, then you oftentimes do have to be a bit more meticulous. So you would start tracking things. I'd look at your macronutrients individually at that point. I couldn't really give a firm answer, but I'm interested in what the other guys think.
Nothing to add here.
Yeah, well, I mean, only quickly, I think it's as long as you're consuming enough or adequate protein. There's a saying that I heard a little while ago that it's okay to be a little bit hungry. So if you are looking to body recomp, you don't have to be satiated all the time. We have plenty of fat within our body. You're not going to starve. You know, you've never known starvation, and you're not going to lose any muscle as long as you're consuming adequate protein. So, and again, as a rough ballpark figure, and I think, you know, we've all got slightly different numbers, but it's more or less around 1 gram per pound of body weight. You know, you can go as low as 0.5 for maintenance. I think 0.82 governs how, you know, whether you can grow or not. But if you're aiming for 1 gram per pound of protein per day, then you're not going to be losing any muscle, and you can move that needle by reducing dietary fat. As we reduce dietary fat, the body's going to burn more body fat. And there's ways to go about this, and I think we can go into this in more detail next time. But there's ways you can stagger it. You can do it set days. I don't think lowering on every day is optimal, and I don't think we've got enough time to go into why I believe that, but maybe one for next week. I think maybe 1 day on, 1 day off, or even 2 days on, 2 days off is more beneficial. But yeah, let's get through some more of these answers.
Yeah, I think there's a nice question we could end on. We haven't got to every question, but I think, you know, we can't be here all night. So I do appreciate everybody putting questions forward. We will work out a great system where we can answer more questions. But I think this is a nice one to finish on because it's a nice practical one from Landers. I have a few friends that like my results on carnivore. They would like to try it, but say they could never afford to eat like this. Is there a cheaper way than eating 600 to 700 grams of ribeye per day, which is a fabulous question. I will start with something unusual because I was talking about it today, which sounds a bit off the topic, but trust me. I mentioned to a client that's coming back, and we were talking about his waist size and the fact that clothes he was wearing were getting tight because he had a bit of a problem and he went off the rails. Okay. And I said, well, one of the things about carnivore, which is very good for your budget, is you don't tend to keep buying clothes that are bigger and bigger and bigger. So this shirt, I probably had, 10 years, something like that. I'm not a cheapskate. It's just that between sort of age 25 to 49, I constantly was expanding. You know, even though I was a personal trainer, sometimes it was good because it was muscle, and sometimes it was not so good because it was a bit of the old muffin top and stuff like that. So one of the things is it is a bit cheaper if you look at all the other things like clothes and, you don't have to buy salads and things like that. And the other thing is ground beef. I think ground beef is a godsend for people that are doing it on a budget. I've done this on a budget, and things like heart are really cheap as well. So that's my 2 penneth, and we'll just go round and hopefully have some pearls of wisdom to make it more affordable.
Yeah, I mean, depends where in the world you are. That's probably the main thing. I think for me, minced beef, ground beef is the go-to. I personally, at the moment, I buy a lot of beef joints. What I do is I put it in the slow cooker, then I'll get maybe 1 or 2 days of food worth of food out of that. And what I'll do is just add a bit of butter to it. You don't have to buy extra expensive butter. At the end of the day, fat is fat. And chances are, if you're buying a good source of butter, even the supermarket stuff, I think is fine. You're omitting a lot of the junk out of your diet already. So trying to fine tune with all this, ultra raw, unpasteurized, unhomogenized, I don't know, grass fed, this and the other. I think that's just smaller levers. I think the main thing is getting on the carnivore diet, being in a somewhat ketogenic state for the majority of the time, if at all possible, being fat adapted and getting rid of all the junk. You'll find as time goes on, you'll stop buying all the extra nonsense that you usually eat. And I find nowadays I only buy about 5 or 6 different foods, and that's it. So I don't have all this extra crap to buy. So yeah, the meat can be expensive, but you don't have to eat ribeyes. Ribeyes are not a mainstay of a carnivore diet, and I don't know many people that eat ribeye every single day because it is so expensive. But it depends where you can get it sourced, and you can find offers. Look online. A lot of times in this country, if I shop online, there'll be a coupon for different, spend £70, save £10, something like that. Look out for things like that as well if you're tight on a budget. I actually worked it out. So I did my university degree in human nutrition. I worked out what a low-income diet would be, and it is about £30 in terms of buying, for the average Western diet. And I'm certain it can be achieved for the average person for somewhere between £25 and £35 per week, which is not a great deal. So it's probably like $40, $45, something like that. So it is certainly possible for the average person. But I think Ben and Phil and probably Rich as well have a better take on this sort of thing because they're probably more resourceful than I.
Yeah, I would actually first counter the argument that meat is expensive. It is not expensive. It depends how you calculate what you're getting. If you're doing it like pounds of produce per unit of currency, then it's more expensive than sugar puffs and in fact it's not probably. But in terms of nutrition for your unit of currency, there's no comparison, particularly with things like lamb's liver that are dirt cheap. So the average adult in the UK spends just over £200 per month on food. The mainstay of my diet, like Jonathan says, is ground beef and minced beef. That's £2.49 for 500 grams from Aldi. And if I have 2 of those a day, that's just under £5 a day. That's under £150 a month. And that's for eating 2 of those a day. And I don't always have 2. But so, you can eat a kilo of meat, 20% fat every day for less than the average adult spends on food in this country. And the other things I'll throw in there, black pudding, bone marrow, and some mackerel for a little bit of variety. But no, it's not expensive. It's a myth.
Yeah, I'd say just get the cheaper cuts that are higher in fat and all sorts of connective tissue and whatever that aren't very nice if you just roast them quickly in the oven. But if you put them in a slow cooker or do them very, very slowly in the oven, they're much nicer than ribeyes, I think. Something like beef short ribs or something is fantastic. But our mainstay is ground beef, but mainly actually ground lamb. We get lamb mince, and it's fatty already. The fat's nice in it. And you can make it as just fry it up and put a bit of bone broth in and have a kind of stew, or you can just do it as burgers. That's one of our mainstays. But also, if you just, it's very important, I think, to get cook stuff, the cheaper cuts very, very slowly, and then they become absolutely delicious. And what we do as well, because just like we do, animals tend to store any toxins in the fat. We buy cheaper sort of lean meat. It's like everybody says, get the high fat beef mince, ground beef. I don't. I get the really lean stuff as well. Not only for the reason that I don't really like the fat that comes in the supermarket ground beef, but I just I can throw some to the cat as well, and they don't do well on high fat. So. But we go down to the grass-fed place and we buy lots and lots of fat to render down into tallow, lots of fatty offcuts, and we get bones and we get liver. And that is always pretty cheap, even at the really good places. And then you've got amazing nutrition. There's grass-fed, and probably 95% the benefit of a fully grass-fed diet without spending an enormous amount down at the local grass-fed farm shop for, you know, fillet steaks and ribeyes and whatever, which were, you know, just so expensive. So there's always ways around it. But yeah, ground beef and lamb, but ground lamb particularly for us is a real mainstay.
Sorry, if I could just chuck in one thing as well. You also have to factor in the other things that you're not spending money on, like pharmaceuticals, medical care, even dentists and dental hygienists as well. Because I used to be subscribed to £15 a month. I've chucked that in now. I've not been for 2 years. Just don't need to.
Yeah, I agree. When I was clinically obese type 2 diabetic, I would regularly visit my local McDonald's or KFC, Burger King, Domino's. I would eat Chinese or Indian food on the weekend, and a meal for just me, it would probably be in excess of about £30. You know, if I was buying for the family, you're talking 40, 50 quid. That soon adds up, and people tend not to factor this in because they look at their shopping bill as one thing and then their takeaway bill as an entirely different thing. But when you stop eating all of that rubbish, and as the other guys have said, when you start buying quality meats, it is actually cheaper. Befriend your local butcher, visit your local butcher, tell him that you're eating lots of meat. You're going to spend 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds a week on meat. What can they do for you? I visit my butcher, I come away with 2 to 3 bags of meat for £60, which lasts me, my wife and my little girl all week and some. So support your local butcher. And again, the cuts, you don't need to eat ribeye every day. Chuck steak is a fantastic option, also known as casserole steak. It's generally half the price of rump. Incredibly fatty, and I absolutely love it. It's meant to be slow cooked, but I just pan fry it because I love the fat on there. Mince, fantastic from your butcher. It's going to come with all sorts of offcuts of offal, highly nutrient dense. So buy in bulk, buy local. And I'm going to be working with a company from Wales soon. So from next week, there's a company that I'm working with who works with a lot of local farmers, and they're going to be supplying grass-fed meats, beef, lamb, all over the UK. I've personally vetted them, and any purchases through me will be 20% off. So that's a big saving, and it's next day delivery. So that's shipped from, it's not currently up and running, but from next week that will be live. Yeah, awesome quality. It's all grass fed, so another option. But buy in bulk, and just eggs is another. Cheese, you know, if you can get on with cheese from Lidl, they do a 900-gram block of cheese. If you can tolerate cheese works really well with me. And there's other fish, and as the guy says, sardines, mackerel, bassa fish is incredibly cheap also. Low in fat, but it's incredibly cheap. So meat isn't as expensive as we are led to believe. I find eating this way, yeah, incredibly money saving. And as Ben says, you know, you're spending less on all of these other supplements and things to overcome all of these ill health issues, as it were. And yeah, and Snap, I haven't been to the dentist for a long time either.
And one other thing, you don't waste any. You know,
yeah, spot on. Yeah.
You know, all the bread goes moldy, vegetables turn to mush in the fridge. You know, you just don't waste meat in that way at all.
84% of food waste is plant matter in the world when you look at the world. Jonathan, it's your brainchild. This is your idea. So could you wrap up for us?
Sure, yeah. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining in tonight for Carnivore Team GB. I believe it is session number 5 or 6. I can't remember now. But it's been a very pleasant experience so far. It's great to have like-minded people in this space, all in the UK, to collaborate together to talk about all things carnivore, meat, stuff, eggs, fish, what have you. We've got, obviously, Coach Stephen here. Check out his stuff, his channel. If you're not subscribed to him yet, please do. Myself, Carnivore Muscle. Ben Hunt and Phil Escott, they run the site, The Big Fat Challenge. Phil also has a group called 100% Carnivore and Beyond. I recommend people join. And also the Keto Pro has a great online store, great products. You'll see me sometimes recommend some of them. And yeah, that's about it. Other than that, I put an ebook out yesterday. Carnivore, what's it called? Beef Up Carnivore Bodybuilding Bible. Forgot the title of it there, but that's a great book for you guys to read up on if you're interested in anything body composition wise. So I recommend checking that one out. But please subscribe to these guys. They do give you their valuable time, and they're offering it for free. I'm not paying them, so I'm grateful for their time. We're going to wrap this up now, and Coach Stephen's going to press the buttons and do all that cool stuff. So
Thanks, bro.